Okay, let's start. So, welcome everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Unlock Your PowerPoint Potential with Design Hacks for Non-Designers. I am Flo from the Empower Sales team, and I'm also a fellow non-designer. So one reason why I'm not alone today, and I'm not holding the presentation, but I have Johanna with me, Johanna Rehnvall, and yeah, she is joining us from California. So good morning, good evening for the ones here in Europe. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that PowerPoint has been a long-term passion for you, right? So you're a long-term expert and not only the founder of Presentitude, which is working together with us in the US with US-based clients, because we can see even today that time zones are always an issue. But you are also a very active board member of the Presentation Guild, which is a pillar of the yearly presentation summit. That's where we met last year. And yeah, the bottom line is you know your PowerPoint. That's why you are here, and I'm not presenting, but you are. And you will talk more about the topic. And just for everyone in the audience, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We will address them at the end. We will have time, dedicated time for questions. And even if we run out of time in the end, we will address the questions via email later on. We will send out a handout of the slides that Johanna is presenting, and we will send out a recording. So even if we have a huge lot of questions, which would be nice, we will not forget about them, and we will send answers out later. So I guess that's all the housekeeping from my side. So yeah, go ahead, Johanna, and kick it off.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So nice to see you. Well, sort of, at least. I am very excited to spend this morning here in California with you today to talk about my absolute favorite topic, PowerPoint. We are going to cover a lot of ground today in the limited time we have together. So let's just get started. Now, if you were in front of me in a room, I could ask all of those of you in the room who had any formal training in PowerPoint to raise your hands. And I would most likely see few, if not no hands in the air. And even if you have a design background, you didn't really design for PowerPoint. And yet here we are, we work in PowerPoint every single day, PowerPoint being one of our most important corporate branding tools. Millions of PowerPoints are created every single day. So we're going to try to make a little dent in that formal training and address at least some topics together this morning. I have 3 topics for you, so much to cover. We're going to focus on these 3 things. Each of them is a topic in itself. I try to distill it down to 3 parts for each topic: the process, how we approach working with slides, tools, some of the great and sometimes underused tools, and we will put those tools into work when we apply some principles, some design principles that even non-designers can use on a daily basis as you're creating your slides. So let's dive right into the first part, the process. This is how you approach working with your slides. We're going to touch on creating structure, simplifying content, and starting to slidify. So starting out with structure, I always like to start out here because as humans, we will try to categorize and chunk information on our own if the information is overwhelming. A creative and very visually stunning presentation with great graphics can fall short if there's no structure or no clear start, middle, and end, or call to action for the audience to take in. Books, newspapers, websites, they all have structure, so why shouldn't our next presentation have structure? And if you don't provide structure, your audience will try to chunk it and organize your structure, organize your content into a structure themselves. And that might not have been what you intended with your content and how it should be consumed. So how you organize your presentation is very important for the success of it. Visual slides without an underlying structure is never the goal. Your structural skills can actually help you create successful and effective presentations. So if you already have the capability to structure content, you have already done a big part before you even have to start designing them. And this brings us to our next part of the process, which is to simplify. Now, because although you might have structured and organize your content, you still have to help out your audience by making sure that you have simplified what you're trying to tell them. We're not talking about dumbing down, just making it easier to take in. The reality is that your audience will try to read everything you place on your slide. And by everything, we mean everything. Everything you add to your slide will take time away from your audience. We're really not good at multitasking, not even women. We can't read slides, listen, process, and take notes at the same time. And your audience can usually read faster than you can speak. So by the time they've stopped reading, they will tune out as you try to catch up with your reading. We need to help focus the audience attentions to the most important points by simplifying the content. So we're going to take this example today. This is the topic itself is not the focus. We're going to use this slide as our demo slides throughout. This is probably a slide you've seen a gazillion times before. I'm going to help you out here to focus on the most important part, like a good food channel chef. I've already read it and highlighted the most important parts. Actually, let's tune out the less important parts. So this slide is about the role of aesthetics and visual fluency in relation to consumer choice. There's 4 main points here. It talks about that it takes 90 seconds for consumers to decide, and people prefer visual displays that are easier to process and understand. We also draw upon our pre-existing associations, and there's 4 visual cues: color, composition, imagery, and typography. So this is our sample slide that we are going to use today. So we're going to come back to this in a moment. These are the main points of the slide that we are going to try to turn into a visual slide at the end of this session. So we'll leave it like this for now, and we are going to go to our next part of the process. Once you have structured and simplified your content, you are ready to Slidify. I don't know if Slidify really is an English word. It's probably not, but it's gonna, for our purposes, it's gonna work. And I think you know what I mean. It is only when we have structured and simplified, we can really start utilizing PowerPoint efficiently. So bringing back our sample here, let's see how our template can help us work with this content. I'm a professional PowerPoint corporate template designer, and when I design templates, I try to make sure that the users have good options to choose from when it comes to the slide layouts, because slide layouts are really a good starting point and should help you save some time as you're designing your slides. I'm going to use this sample template for us today here, and in this particular case, we do have some options here what we could start using for to try to make this slide content into a real, more visual slide. So let's take a closer look. We have some 3 options, and let's start with this one, content with caption. Maybe we'll use this one. It has 3 content areas here. The title, it has an area where I could pop that quote in there, and maybe the main content area could be for those bullets, maybe, or maybe this one here. This is the one that was called statement in this particular template. It has also 3 content areas, and I could use that blue box there to put my quote in, and then I have some space for the other points. Or maybe I'll use this one. This is one that is called side title, and this is where the title is on the side and not across. It's going to break the pattern of all those horizontal title slides. So, maybe this one. So, when you start slidifying, taking a moment to really look at the template and the layouts, it might help you with some time-saving aspects here to choose a good one to start working with your content. Now, if you are an Empower user, if you are an Empower slide user, you don't only, of course, have the slide layouts and the template available, you will also have the corporate design templates library with hundreds of slide templates to choose from. But the slide layouts and the template is always a good starting point for those of us who use only a PowerPoint. So now we have structure, we have simplified our content, and we have started to slidify it. Let's see what PowerPoint tools we could potentially use as we're working on this. There are, of course, a ton of PowerPoint tools. I could spend probably a full week going through all the corners of PowerPoint and ways for power users to use these tools to their maximum capacity. But today we're going to focus on 3 tools, which I think are at times underutilized and at the same time very time consuming. We're going to talk about format, shape, selection, pane, and align and arrange. And when we get to the last part, we're going to put them to action and work with them. So let's start let's talk about format shape. That is one of the most essential tools to quickly find and utilize. And the way to get to the format shape is to, when you have something on your slide, right click on it, and then you're going to get this contextual menu, and that is going to bring you the format shape. The format shape is going to show up in the menu down here. Now it's going to be, it's contextual. So if you selected an image, it's going to say format image. If you selected a chart, it's going to say format chart. But what's going to happen is it's going to open up the format shape side pane here. That is an additional menu bar for you to use. And I'm going to go through this because there's a lot of different tools that you'll find in this area. It has, in essence, 3 sub-menus. It has, the content is divided also into shape options and text options. The options are more or less the same. We're going to focus on the shape options today. And there's 3 parts to it. So let's see what we can do with the format shape tools here. The first icon on the bar here is the fill and line icon, indicating it's going to show you the fill tools and the line tools. You can control the fill of a shape or the line of a shape, the transparencies and the width and so on and so forth. The second one in the middle is the effects tools. The effect tools, you have a lot of effects tools here. There are some, soft edges tools, some glow reflection, 3D format. You should probably stay away from most of them, but on this tab, we will find the shadow tools. And if your brand so permits, that could be a handy tool to add some shadow to whatever you're creating on your slides. And you will find the control of the shadows on the format shape side pane and the effects group here. You can use the presets or you can create your own shadows should you so want to. The third icon is showing you the size and properties. This is where we can control all the sizes of whatever we have on our slide and the position, and also any text box settings, the alignment of the text in a text box, the padding of a text box. And all of these tools, of course, in one way or the other, are available on the different functionalities up on the tab on our in the ribbon. But if you have the format shape open, you can keep it open and just do multiple shapes at the same time and navigate between and just go between these 3 different areas. You can keep the format shape open if you want to. If you want to close, you always have the option to use the little X in the upper right corner. That's going to close it out. If you want to bring it back in, you can just right click and then again open up the format shape again. So that is the format shape, and we're going to put this to use when we get to the slide design in our third part. The next tool that I want to talk about is the selection pane. The selection pane is almost like an indirect tool in PowerPoint, but utilizing the selection pane the right way can save you a lot of time, especially if you are planning on adding some animation to your slide. And I'm not talking about advanced, crazy animations, but just subtle animation to help you go through your content. And we're going to check this out as well when we get to the next part. Now, how do we access the selection pane? If you go to the Home tab and to the Arrange button and expand it, you're going to find the selection pane down at the very bottom here. The selection pane is going to show you all the objects that you have on your slide. If you have nothing, it's going to be empty. But if you have stuff on your slide, they're going to show up in the selection pane. The selection pane is a place where you can select your objects, you can change their order, you can change the visibility. You have the little eye icon here, so if you have something you don't want to show in your slide, you can exit them out without removing them, so you still have them there. And as you can see, the names in here are very generic. We have a rectangle 4, a text box 41, a rectangle 1, a graphics 3. And for most slides, this might not matter, but the second you are going to try to control your slide and want to see what's on your slide and maybe add some animation, this can get really tricky. The selection pane also shows the C order of the slide, meaning that whatever is at the bottom is at the back of the slide, and whatever is at the top is at the front of the slide. So if you're organizing maybe text on top of shapes and icons on top of shapes, this is where you can control exactly by dragging and dropping these different items in here. I usually also spend some time in the selection pane renaming my objects so that I can control better what I have on my slide. meaning that I will select an object on the slide, open up the selection pane, and make sure that I name it to something that would make sense for me going forward. So here I've done that, and as you can see, I've made sure that all my text boxes have a text prefix, the icons have an icon prefix, and the background has a background prefix, and then I've identified exactly what they are. And I'm going to show you how that makes sense when we get to the animations later. Now, today we're not talking about accessibility. Accessibility is a topic in itself, and the selection pane is extremely important when you set up your slide decks for accessibility. If you're sharing them with other people and they might have to read your slides through a screen reader, the selection pane will be the place where you make sure you have the right C order and that the names and the alt text of everything has been set up correctly. Today, we're not going to address accessibility. We're going to use the selection pane as a design tool for when we are going to get to animations eventually. Okay, so next tool is the align and arrangement tool. And I will say that this is the first thing that I do every single day when I work with slides that comes into my shop. I align and arrange. If we could put a tracker on my computer on how many times I use these tools a day, it would probably be in the hundreds. This is where I spend most of my times when I'm working with slides. So where do you find your alignment and arrangement tools? Again, on the Home tab, go to the Arrange button here, and then if you go all the way down, you'll find all the alignment tools. You can find these tools in other ways as well. If you select an object on your slide, the contextual tab format shape or format table or format chart will show up, and on those ribbons you'll find these tools as well, but you can always come back to the Home tab and find these tools. You have a lot of different ways of aligning things here. So we have the horizontal alignment tools where you can align to the left, to the center, and to the right. The vertical alignment tools where you can align your objects to the top, to the middle, to the bottom. And then we can distribute these selected objects either horizontally or vertically. And of course, if you are an Empower user, you have a lot of additional tools in the layout tools functionality on top of this. If you are a PowerPoint user, you always have the alignment and the arrangement tools. And if you are an Empower user, you have additional tools as well, which will bring you even more power to making sure you're aligning and arranging your slides. So again, if we have objects on our slide, we can quickly use the alignment tools to make sure that they are distributed horizontally and they're aligned to the middle, or that they are distributed vertically and aligned center. So these are the tools that I wanted to highlight today: the format shape, the selection pane, and the align and arrange tool. Again, thousands of tools to use in PowerPoint, and these are the three that we're going to put to use today. And that is going to bring us into our third part. The third part being our design principles. There are a lot of design principles, but for today's purposes, I am going to focus on 3 design principles and put those into action and see how we can make our slides look a little bit more polished. We're going to start out with contrast. So contrast is a design principle that is here to help us make our elements unique so that they will stand out using, for example, color, size, shape. Contrast really means difference, and we are hardwired to notice differences. It is one of the most powerful design concepts. Any design element on a slide can be contrasted with one another. So, for example, here, if we take the samples on the slide and apply some contrast, you can see that I'm trying to help you as a viewer to get a main point by using contrast and highlighting the most important thing on the slide. So this was the before contrast, and this is the after, pointing out the main point that I want you to focus on when doing my slides. Now, the next one is proximity. Proximity means that we are going to place related elements clearly together so that they will convey their relationship to one another. So related objects on a slide should be grouped together so that they're easy to quickly see from the user's perspective, from the audience perspective. So the audience should never have to work, right, to try to understand what your slides are trying to say, what caption goes with what graphic, what subtitle goes with what text box. So here you can see how I have applied some proximity. So here was the before and here was the after. Now you would say, hey, wait a minute, isn't that also applying contrast? Absolutely true. None of these design principles work in, function in a void. They all go together. So not only did I group these objects together, but at the same time, I also helped the grouping by applying some contrast, making some text blue, some text larger, as well, besides the proximity aspect. The third design tool is the alignment. The third design principle is the alignment principle. That means that we want to connect visual elements, creating a cohesiveness amongst them and an invisible grid in the background. Nothing on our slides should look as it was placed here completely randomly. So applying alignment really is the way to create unity among elements on a single slide. And alignment is what makes a slide look more sophisticated and polished and professional. So here we have these samples aligned. You can see the alignment lines here, so you can see how I align these. So again, this is the before, and this is the after. So alignment really, if nothing else, just applying the alignment design principle is going to make your slides look better. Okay, we are going to move back to the sample that we started out with. Remember that busy bulleted slide. Here we have that condensed, simplified version, not dumbing it down, but just making sure that we are focusing on the main points. Now, this is what we have, aesthetics and visual fluency. That's our title. We talked about the 90 seconds, and people prefer visual displays that are easier to process and understand, the pre-existing associations, colors, composition, imagery, and typography. And I think maybe we need to bring some simple context back in here to make it a little bit easier to work with. So even though we did simplify it down to pick out the main topics, bringing some content back is going to make it a little bit easier for us to create a slide based off of this. Okay, so we have our content here. Let's do the slidifying and whatever that word might be. So we're going to come back to our sample template and take a look at what do we have to work with in this particular template. And I think I'm going to choose that statement 1 with the 3 content areas. Now, if you don't have this particular layout in your template, you can recreate something like this on your own. In this particular case, there was a layout that I could use. So I'm going to pop in my content into the slide layout and the different placeholders to save me some time. And again, I've just applied some contrast here. That quote really can go on its own. It can go there on the side. That's going to make it stand out, and I can refer to it. So that is applying some contrast to the slide. I also think that we need to apply some more contrast here. Maybe we'll make the quote a little bit bigger, and again, focusing on the main parts again and highlighting them even more. But I think we also need to apply some proximity here to make sure that it's easy for everyone to understand what part goes together with what part, so that we can help the visuals also help out convey the main 3 topics here on the right side of the slide. Now, this is a very text-intensive slide, so maybe we want to bring in some visuals to help convey the messages that we're trying to work with. So maybe these icons can help out. These are simple icons. I could use them. However, 4 of them are kind of square, and that color palette there is round. So maybe I want to bring in a container to host them together. So I'm going to also bring in those shadow boxes and create shadow boxes to contain them all together. And now I can start laying out my content on the slide. So we have 3 groups here, and they're all in the proximity of one another where they should be. However, again, we need to apply some alignment here. So I'm going to align things in. Here you can see how I have those alignment lines and how things have been lined up using the alignment tools. And then this is the final slide that we have to work with. Now, I will say this. This is still a pretty busy slide. There's a lot of information here. If you put this up as you're presenting, there's a lot of things that goes on, and your audience will definitely, again, start reading everything that is on this slide. It is more accessible than the one we had with all the bullets, but it's a lot of information here. What you can do at this point is to think about, maybe we should add some animation to go through this step by step. So putting some animation in place here, very simple, nothing complex, just a fade animation. We can bring in part by part, starting out talking about consumers They decide if they like a product or not within 90 seconds, talk about that. And then bring in our second part, that visual fluent products draw upon consumers' pre-existing associations. And then finally, bring in the third topic, that we have some visual cues for fluency. And then you can bring them in one by one as you talk to them. Maybe there are questions, you can just go through them one by one at the pace that you want. And then eventually bringing in that quote to sort of connect it all together. And that is just some animation that has been added onto it. So let's talk about how we use the tools to get to this particular slide. We're going to start out with the animation part and connect and talk about the selection pane. Now, when you animate a slide, the way you do it is that you select an object on your slide, and then you go to your animations tab, and then you will pick an animation. I usually resort to the very subtle animations. There's usually no need to go crazy here. Fade works perfectly fine. And once you've added an animation, you have to actively, this is not going to open automatically, but you can actively open the animation pane. The animation pane you'll find here on your ribbon. And when you open up your animation pane, you're going to see all the animations that you have selected. Now, for those of you who are, maybe not as advanced users in PowerPoint, you know that adding animations can be overwhelming pretty quickly. Here you can see that we have an animation of text box 23, text box 4, text box 2, text box 15, straight connector. If we now wanted to make some changes to this, you can't really remember which one was rectangle 4, which one is graphic 3. And why does it say this? Where does these name comes from? Well, they come again from the selection pane. So whatever you have in your selection pane is going to be the names that show up in your animation pane. So, as I mentioned before, if you spend some time in your selection pane renaming your object, it's going to make it easier if you decide to then animate, because then you can, of course, bring those, the names will automatically show up in the animation pane, and it's going to make it easier to see that we have our colors here, then composition and imagery and typography. If you name, depending on how you named your objects, you can quickly see that, here we have all our icons, the typography icon, imagery, composition, and colors. These are the icons in here. And then you can see them, and you see them in the animation pane as well. So spending some time in the selection pane is going to save you time later if you are going to animate. If you don't animate, if you don't necessarily have to refer to the selection pane, if your slides are simple, you don't have to activate this tool. But if you think you want to bring in some animation to convey a more complex slide, start with renaming your objects in the selection pane before you start animating, because that is going to make it easier. Okay, let's see the format shape tools. Let's use those boxes that we have on our slide. How did I use the format shape to set up these boxes? So again, here we have the format shape contextual toolbar. It opens up if you select something and right click and open format shape. I started out with the fill and line. So I set the fill here to a solid fill for all those text boxes. I set it to white. There's no transparency. And I added in a line. I set it to this gray color. The width of the line is 0.75 points here. Now, you could, of course, do this from the ribbon and from all the commands that you have under the tabs, but you have to open up the drop-down menus and you don't see it at once. And I like to see everything that I'm doing. So I have all of this here in the fill and line areas of the format shape. Then I went over to the second tab here, to my effects tab, and I went to the shadow box and the shadow commands, and I decided to add a shadow in. So you started out with the pre-set, and then I made some subtle changes using these tools here to make the shadow look like this. My brand permits shadows. If your brand does not permit shadows, you might not want to add them. But if you think that they can help you out with highlighting something, then this is where you would find those tools. The last part that I did was to go to the size and properties. This is where I set the size of all the shapes is 1.54.1.54. There's no rotation here. I set the text box component of these shapes to the text has a vertical alignment of bottom, so that you can see the text is down here. And I set this to do not auto fit, even though the text might not fit. I don't want it to shrink if the text is longer. I want the same size. And then I make sure that I remove the padding. I don't need any padding at the left, the right, at the top, but there is some padding here at the bottom because I don't want the text to be all the way to the bottom. So I still have some space between the edge and the text, but I have a lot of space here for my icons that I can bring in. So this is how an example of how I use the format shape side pane here to define these boxes, for example. Now, what about the alignment tools? Again, the alignment tools you can find on your Home tab and under the Arrange drop-down menu, and we can see all of our alignment tools here. And for this particular slide, I used Align Left and I used Align Center horizontally, and for the vertical alignment, I use top, middle, and bottom, and I also use the distribute horizontally. And if we take a look at how exactly I use those, you can see all the different alignments on this particular slide here, how things are aligned to the bottom. For example, the text boxes, and we have Align Center, and all the tools that we used here. So to summarize it all up, this is where we started. This is the first slide that we had, the very heavy text slide, and this is where we ended up with a more visual slide. And then again, we also added in some animation to go through a slide step by step. Now, what if you need to hand out this slide? This needs to be left behind for everyone that participated in this particular presentation. This slide can go together with your knowledge of the topic. You know what you're talking about, and you can explain and you talk to these different areas and all the text and all the visuals that are on this slide. But if you are seeing this slide without your presentation, it might not be as easy to take in. Then you actually might need all the text that was on the original slide. Now, what you can do is utilize the handout functionality that is built in PowerPoint. So an option is to create an additional separate handout so the audience can have the full text. Now, if you had a good template designer for your corporate deck, your template has the notes page set up. You will find a notes page if you go to the View tab and click on the notes page. That was going to show you a printable size page, and it's going to have the thumbnail of each of the slides somewhere on the slide, and you can move it around. And when you have the notes page view open, this is a page. You can add whatever you want in here. I added a line. I put this particular thumbnail on the right-hand side. You can edit your text. You can bring in images, charts, whatever you need to bring in here and set this up. This is still the slide. So if you were to go over to the normal view, you will see the slide. And if you go back to the notes pages, you will see the handout layout. Then you can potentially just print the handouts. So there's a functionality in PowerPoint where you say print, you can print the handouts only. And this is what you send out to your audience. So they'll see the slide that was shown, but they will also see all the text. But now we don't have the bullets, it's true paragraphs here. So you have that ready for you to use. And if, of course, you have the time, you can always create a complete separate handout slide, which is something that you leave behind. This is not the handout master. This is a full 16:9 slide. It's a separate slide, however, and this is what you show. And if you send this out, this is maybe what you send it out. So you have all the text in here. And since this is not going to be shown, it's just going to be the handout version, you can create it like so with all the text in here. Again, using the tools and using the design principles to this slide. So to sum it up, today we talked about the process of approaching slide design, making sure that we have a good structure. That's always a good starting point. Creating visual slides and avoid is not the purpose here. We need to make sure we have a structure and that we have simplified our slides, and then we can go on to slidifying them. And then familiarizing ourselves with some useful PowerPoint tools. We talked about the selection pane, the format shape, and the alignment and arrangement tools. And then we also talked about 3 design principles when designing the slides. We talked about contrast, proximity, and alignment today. So hopefully we did a little bit of a small dent in the need for PowerPoint training. And if I asked you again, did you have any formal PowerPoint training, maybe you could raise a pinky finger at least after this session. So hopefully you have some ideas and some inspiration for when you sit down in front of PowerPoint the next time. So with that, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. As far as I can see, we have no questions right now, so I will give everyone the chance to maybe put in questions now if you have them. But there are people thanking you for the presentation. I do as well. It was very interesting to see the transition from the old slides to the new one. And I mean, I knew size of the text is an issue, but the recoloring and therefore creating more contrast. I mean, I knew contrast is an issue, like bright text on dark slides and vice versa, but using different colors without coloring it too much was new to me. So thank you for that. Someone is asking about your experience with creating handouts in Word, so exporting to Word. Do you have something to share about that?
You absolutely, if you prefer to have Word, you can, as you know, and in PowerPoint, you can move over to the view where you see the document properties, and you can see all the slides that are laid out. So if I go out here from slideshow mode, let me go back to a sample. So if you go to our view tab here, we can go to our outline view, and the outline view will show all the content that we have in a particular presentation. However, if you have a lot of visuals and you have a lot of, maybe you have icons and maybe you've divided things up and you have things in the text box, it's not as easy to automatically bring it over to Word. And Word, of course, is a canvas that will push. The more you push on one page, it's going to push to the next page. So you have to spend in some more time and making sure where those page breaks are coming out. At the end of the day, I think that the most important part is that you might have a slide that you show to your audience that is easy accessible and you can talk to it. You are your presentation, right? And your slides shouldn't overpower that. Your slides should actually just help you out with your presentation. So if you prefer to create a handout in Word, or if you prefer to set it up like we did here, like the notes page. This is a particular notes page for in PowerPoint here for this template. The tool isn't as important. The important thing is that you provide a handout after if you think that they need to have a leave behind where you can add additional information, full sentences, more text, facts and figures, the full data sheets, whatever it might be. So if you prefer Word, by all means, go for it. You can, if you have a lot of information on your slides, you can go to the outline view. You can just grab it and copy and paste it and move that over to Word. But again, it depends on if you have the content in your placeholders. If you have text boxes and shapes like that, it's not going to be as easy. But yay for Word handouts, that works as well if you so prefer.
Perfect, thank you. I don't understand the question, but maybe you do. There's a command and file menu that's a little moody. Any experience?
I say that again. There's a command in the file menu
that's a little moody. And if you have any experience with that.
Moody?
Yeah.
There's a command that is moody. I'm not sure I understand that question either. So file. Not sure. Maybe the person can clarify the question, and I will be happy to see if I can answer it. But I'm not sure that
for exporting handouts.
Oh, okay. For exporting handouts, yes. Okay. So if we wanted to, if we wanted to print our slides, we can come in here and we can say print notes pages. So when you go to File and you go to Print, you can select. So the default is to print full page layouts, right? And then you have your notes pages, and that is going to print the notes pages. Now, if you're in Europe, you know that your paper is A4. If you're in the US, your paper is letter size, and the handout is neither. It is not a letter, it is not an A4. There are ways of actually going in the back end and set this up so that it's actually you can change the formatting. It requires some XML programming to do that, but if you Google it, there are ways. I know Mike Parkinson, one of the PowerPoint MVPs, have done some work in this. But this is how you would, print. You don't have to print it. You can of course now change it to print it as a PDF. So this will be, a PDF version. You don't have to print it if I mean, people are not in the offices anymore. Maybe they don't print, but they need the PDF version of this. So of course you can just either use Microsoft's, print to PDF, or if you have Adobe, you could use that as well. But yeah, if that is what you were talking about, yeah, print, and then you can just select the notes pages. You can also print, of course, as outline and print the handouts in different versions as well. But that is a way to share your handouts, the notes pages.
I hope that answers the question.
I hope so too.
I don't see any other questions right now. So if there's nothing coming in, thank you again, Johanna. Thank you for the nice, concise presentation and what you can do. And as I said in the beginning, we will send out the presentation, not perfectly as it is, but in a handout version because of all the animations and everything, which is hard to convey in a printed version. And the recording of this webinar. And yeah, that leaves me with wishing you a great day or a great evening wherever you are. And thank you all for participating.
Thank you for having me. Good luck with PowerPointing, everyone.